Ladies and gentlemen, we have some breaking news on the Rem and Sam podcast. Some semi-breaking news, at least anyways. So we finished recording initially about an hour ago, and right after we got done recording, less than 5 minutes after we got done recording, the New York Knicks have officially done it. They were able to pull off the trade. The Villanova core is complete. The Villanova Infinity Stones have been assembled for the New York Knicks. They got Bridges from the Nets. The New York Nets have done it, or New York Knicks have done it. They've officially been able to acquire Mikal Bridges. Like we said, that happened about an hour ago at the time we're taping this. And Woj was tweeting out some stuff. There's a couple other moves that went down as well, too. So we were going to give it a couple of minutes to wait and just check and see if anything else went down. It doesn't look like at this point that too much else has happened. Woj tweeted out a couple minutes ago, but it doesn't look like he's going to be too much more active. But the official deal between the Knicks and the Nets. Let's scroll down the Woj Twitter here. The Knicks are sending 4 unprotected first-round picks to the Nets in 25, 27, 2029, and 2031. We're already trading picks in the 2030s. Is that the first pick in the 2030s to get traded? Who knows? But they're also sending a unprotected 2025 via Milwaukee. So those are all their own picks. And then they're sending a pick they have via the Bucks, first-round pick, an unprotected 28 pick swap, and also a second-round pick as well, too. And they're sending back Bogdanovich for the contract purposes as well. So, like I said, we tried to get Sam to jump on to do some instant reactions. I thought this would be a Sam-level event, Mikal Bridges on the move, but we will have to wait till this weekend to to hear what our guy Sam has to say about it. But the one thing he did say, we've been texting about it, and he did say that, yeah, it is a lot of picks, which when I initially heard it, I was like, holy cow, that is a lot for Bridges to give up basically five first-round picks for a guy. And now, looking at the entire trade in full, they only give up one player in the deal, but still, I mean, they're giving up 7 pieces, 7 assets to the Nets back for Bridges for a guy that, we both love Bridges. We all the Bridges stock in the world is not like a crazy resume guy. And I was going through and trying to go back and freshen up on some of the other, kind of comparable big trades. Cause like Anthony Davis, Paul George, I think those guys are kind of a notch up. But even like Gobert too, like Gobert, when he got traded, he was 3 defensive players of the year in. He's since, won last year. He's got the 4th one, but at least he's got that kind of pedigree that at least you can get some markup on a Gobert trade because of that hardware. But Bridges doesn't really necessarily have that. So it is all picks. And the Nets are clearly now, this is reset, rebuild mode. We'll see if Ben Simmons if there's any takers for Ben Simmons now that the market's open. And we'll see who else is available / who they want to hold on to. Like, is Cam Thomas available? Are there any Cam Thomas takers? Will Nick Claxton re-sign in free agency? I feel like the ripple effects through the Eastern Conference for this one are pretty crazy. We can definitely, again, get into that on Friday. But I also kind of thought that maybe the trade market would, I don't want to say reset a little bit, but I didn't know if teams would be so aggressive in just trading all of these picks out in the future. But maybe it's just the Gobert trade being successful again this year, at least quote unquote successful in our eyes, with them beating the Nuggets in the playoffs, getting to the Western Conference Finals, almost making the championship game. So the fact that trade has kind of worked out, maybe teams are more willing to sacrifice the long-term assets, but I was surprised. I mean, Bridges has made like one all defensive team. And again, I don't want to seem like I'm doing the zag now and they overpaid for Bridges, but it is a lot to give up. But I wonder if because you think about those moves like Gobert to the Timberwolves. I was also looking at like Drew Holiday to the Celtics. Drew Holiday was traded for 4 pieces, 2 players and 2 picks. Harden, when he went from Philly to the Clippers, 4 players and 2 picks, plus 2 other seconds, but basically like 6 main pieces. Mitchell was the same for Gobert, essentially 3 players, 3 picks, and 2 swaps. Big, big deals for Utah, we know. But again, at least those guys, there was a little bit of, I said at least is not the great way to say it, but there was a little bit of hardware to drive up the price there. And those guys are all going to teams that are trying to be contending teams and trying to win right away. So I do wonder if these teams build in that bump into the trade request where if there were, say they were going to trade Bridges to another sort of mid team, which I don't think they were, like they wouldn't really benefit anything from that. But I mean, unless, again, they were just overpay and then you always can benefit from that. But, if they're going to trade him for a mid team, I don't know if they're able to drive up the price the way they are. Maybe the mid team is just not as desperate as the win now team. They're like, hey, we have to, go all in at this very moment. We'll do whatever it takes. But I do wonder, yeah, it's like there is that little bit of a tax to be like, hey, you're going to take this guy and you're going to bring him in, and it's going to raise your ceiling up to not just another level, but oh, now there's real title aspirations. Because again, I haven't heard what Sam has to say in terms of what he thinks like the upside for this Knicks team is, but I would assume that, I mean, they were kind of already in the mix without him anyways, at least on the outside looking in. So I would assume this puts them firmly into a in the mix conversation. But regardless, I do think, overpaying a little bit as well too, just for the Villanova culture is not necessarily the worst thing in the world versus, maybe the overpaying for touching the mics is another thing. But there was one other mini little ripple effect that Woj was tweeting about after this. And there was another trade that the Nets had made with the Rockets as well too, where the Nets were able to regain control of their pick in next year's draft and maybe another future pick as well there too. And the Rockets, another ripple effect, are gearing up for trying to trade for Kevin Durant, is what Woj is saying. So I don't know. That's probably not going to happen this summer, but the Rockets firmly planting themselves as like, hey, we're going to be in there in February in the trade deadline when this Phoenix thing is not working out and you inevitably want to try to blow it apart. But the Nets also made that move where they got back the picks. But then there was this other move I was trying to find here. Oh yeah, this other tweet that Woj put out. This where he was talking about basically now that they have a wing in Bridges, what's going to happen with the Anunoby contract. And he said that they're still determined is the word that he used, still determined to keep Anunoby, but maybe they might have more difficulty re-signing Hartenstein, which there might be a couple teams that overpay for him anyways. But I hadn't actually looked up what the OG contract number was projected to be. So I know we kind of all were like, hey, he's going to be back. The Knicks, you guys bring the guy back. He would be on about like a $35 million a year deal is what Windhorst was. I read that Windhorst had said that they were willing to give him was something in that range. And the max they could offer to Hartenstein is about 18 million. Now, modern day salary cap, I mean, 35 million is half of what Jaylen Brown is going to be making. So I don't think OG Anunoby is half the player of Jaylen Brown. But, Hartenstein, and I guess I would have to go and look and see if let's say they were able to keep Hartenstein, but not Anunoby, but keep Hartenstein, add another player in free agency. And then we mentioned as well, too, for the Knicks that they didn't give up they gave up their pick starting in 2025. So they still have 2 picks in this year's draft. They still have the 24th and the 25th pick, which we'll see what ends up happening with those picks. Stay tuned. But, they're still going to be able to add a couple more rotation pieces there later in the draft. So, as much as I love Anunoby, I do wonder, I'll have to ask Sam this on Friday. I do wonder if there's a conversation where, if you're trying to beat the Celtics specifically, and again, you already have Bridges, you're going to be running Brunson, Bridges, say Randall's fully healthy. Randall will be out there as the big, that's sort of your, I guess, your big three. If you're the Knicks, DiVincenzo and Hart as well, too, kind of earn their role. Now, DiVincenzo and Hart will probably be a little bit more matchup based, but Hartenstein as a Porzingis Horford matchup, because the defense from Hartenstein last year was crazy. Did Hartenstein end up on all defensive team? He was definitely in the voting if he didn't make the actual roster. Yeah, he didn't make the roster, but let's see how many votes he ended up getting, or we might have to dig a little deeper to just what I was looking for that. But regardless, his defense was incredible last year, and just as a role guy piece on his price, I wonder if it's a conversation. Again, we'll have to look and see what the flexibility is they can do if it were to work like that, because they traded for Anunoby. So I don't know if they trade for him, they get some bird right thing. They can sign him to that number under the cap, but they're supposed to have some cap space anyways, if I'm not mistaken. So, or maybe that's for next year, but the only other thing I could think of is now they're missing Jay Wright. That's the last missing piece for this Villanova core. Do they have to bring in Jay Wright in some sort of advisory associate coach role? I mean, Nick fans, how connected are you to Tom Thibodeau? I don't want to start anything with the Knicks fans here. I better be careful. But I mean, hey, if Jay Wright was actually the last Infinity Stone, and I guess I guess that's a dumb question. I was gonna say, if Jay Wright is the missing piece to win a title, would you do it? Obviously, you would go out and get the missing piece to win the title. But I do, Thibodeau is been able to regain a bunch of respect in the league and regain his status as one of the top-notch coaches. So I don't know if they would necessarily be thrilled to move off of him, even for a guy as highly touted as Jay Wright. But I guess it's him and Arcidiacono. Is Chris Jenkins still out there? Pascal Spellman, former first-round pick himself, sneaking into the first round. Shout out to Atlanta Hawks. But unbelievable. I think a pretty good trade for both sides. I think a bunch of picks, no players for the Nets is pretty fine again. And they have a smattering of guys already to try to figure out stuff to do with. So I think, an A- trade for the Nets. Not losing Bridges is always tough. Like we said, we just have a lot of Bridges stock. So you want him on your roster, especially when you got him back in that deal for Kevin Durant. Now that Kevin Durant deal as well, too, I didn't even think about that. That becomes a huge trade where they get back Bridges, Johnson, the picks, and now, they've given up some of that stuff with this Rockets deal, but all of the picks from the Bridges trade, just go ahead and throw those right into what they got for Kevin Durant as well, too. So I know it technically doesn't hurt the Suns, but the fact that the Suns continue to help the Nets and that the Suns might be doing what the Nets are doing in a couple of months with the Rockets by trading Durant to Houston, maybe it hurts just a little bit to see the Nets continue to win this way. But hey, the Nets with the Tatum and Brown and that whole ordeal and the picks and just watching Boston over the last decade and all that stuff. And even the luck they had in the lottery this year with trading Harden, trading for Harden, and now one of those picks ends up becoming a top 3 pick in a draft that maybe not a draft where you're super bummed out about it, but I think you still want the control and still want to be able to do what you want. So in Klingon, if they had Klingon on this team with all these picks already, would be, I guess we had Klingon, we'll see what happens. I was thinking Houston really wants Klingon at number 3. So I was just thinking him at that spot. But if if they were able to get a guy there in that Houston spot at number 3, pair him with all these potential pick, just a way to start the rebuild, wouldn't be a bad place to start. But shout out to the Knicks. Shout out to Bridges, Josh Hart, and their new co-host on the roommate pod. Did we get another roommate pod, dueling roommate pods with DiVincenzo and Bridges on one and Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson on the other? We will see what happens. Maybe we get them on Rem and Sam Plus. We start rivalry shows. That's how we tear the Knicks apart. But they're definitely better for it in the, I was going to say in the short term, but in the long term as well, too. Having those 2 picks this year is like a sneaky clutch little thing to be able to sneak those 2 guys in on the books. So very good trade for the Nets. Again, I think A-. I'm maybe, is there a player that you would want to really get back? If they had gotten back McBride, would have been nice. But other than that, because they're not going to part with any of the main role guys. So I think getting back all picks, and then Bogdanovich, who was a trade piece himself, you'll probably end up spinning him for something and getting more continued assets from that Kevin Durant trade. The tree continues to grow, but we'll cut it off there for the Mikal Bridges trade talk. We'll probably, again, like I said, talk about that on Saturday. I'm sure we'll talk about the draft again on Saturday. We're just going to, whatever we talk about today, we're going to run it back with Sam on Saturday, because that's what's going on this week in the sports world. But let's get to the rest of the episode. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Rem and Sam podcast. We almost had to throw baseball on in the background tonight. That's how desperate it is right now in the sports world, trying to find something to watch. The NBA, of course, is over. Hockey wrapped up last night in dramatic fashion. We're recording this Tuesday night. The WNBA is taking a couple of days off. I didn't look into why they're doing that, but there's no WNBA on tonight as well. And Harlem Nights just finished playing on the Pluto TV Black Visionaries channel. So unfortunately, we missed putting on that movie in the background as well. And it almost, we were eyeing that Yankees Mets game. It was getting late at the bar, and we were like, hey, we might have to go home with Yankees Mets. But fortunately, we ran back over to Pluto real quick, opened that back up, and Bad Boys 2 is on. So Martin Lawrence wearing a Mike Vick jersey. I think it's enough for a sports podcast, I think, to be able to count Bad Boys 2. But speaking of hockey, I did want to mention real quickly that Game 7, because, I mean, we were saying we're desperate for stuff to watch right now. And I had to just, like we're saying, have something to watch. So that hockey game was going on no matter what. But a couple of days ago, I think it was last week, while the Edmonton Oilers were making their 3-0 comeback, because that's the reason the game was so historic for those that weren't tuned in on what was going on in the Stanley Cup Finals. The Florida Panthers were playing the Edmonton Oilers, and the Panthers were up 3-0, and the Oilers were able to make the comeback and force a Game 7, tie the series 3-3. Now, of course, it's like, if it's like an NBA thing, it's, it's only a couple of times that the teams have come back to force the Game 7. The Celtics most recently did it, obviously, against the Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. But I think, has it happened in hockey that somebody's won it? It happened in baseball. I guess I don't know exactly if it has happened in hockey. I was going to say confidently that it had, but now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, no shocker. It might be just as hard to actually pull off the 4 straight in the Stanley Cup Finals, or just in the playoffs against a playoff caliber team, as it might be just as hard in hockey as it is in basketball. Pause. But anyways, we had to check out that Game 7 because a couple of days ago, Greeny on Get Up was saying, so I was turned on ESPN to watch First Take, and I caught the outro of Get Up, and Greeny just tossed out there at the end, like, oh yeah, Connor McDavid, he's currently the best athlete on the planet. Strong statement from Greeny. If he was going to say something like, hey, Connor McDavid is like, I guess Greeny can't just say that he's the hottest athlete on the planet and leave that with no context and drop it into First Take. But, in sports terms, like on a hot streak, if he was on the hottest hot streak of any athlete currently, if he was, at the we did the peak of his powers things last year, if he was like at the most peak of his powers of any athlete, like the most, like I get all that stuff, but the best athlete, I was like, okay, Greeny, well, we're going to have to now definitely watch Connor McDavid to see what's going on. And I have no idea what's going on in hockey. I mean, like we're saying, I don't watch baseball. Sam knows I don't watch soccer. Because of Sam, I've started to watch a little bit more, but I still don't really, like know the rules or formations or plays or like any of the technical stuff. And because of FIFA, I do know offsides, obviously, and some of the basic rules like that. But I mean, okay, UFC, starting to get a little more knowledgeable in that, at least in just like what his stuff is called. And then when you see it, you're like, okay, at least I know what that move is. But yeah, in terms of hockey, it's like we are flying totally blind watching a hockey game. But there were a couple of times that Connor McDavid, got the puck and made a couple of moves and like skated through a couple of guys, like split the double team. Again, if we were doing like an NBA comparison, and when he was like made the couple of moves, I was like, okay, you can definitely see that his talent, like he's operating on a different level. Just as a non-hockey guy, it really jumped out those couple of times. But then again, just in terms of a sports fan who has watched great players, great and big moments. And again, I don't know anything about hockey, so I don't know how much the one player impact versus the team impact sort of balances out. And I don't know how good maybe the Panthers were the Boston Celtics this year of the hockey league, and maybe this was like a Celtics Mavs thing where the Oilers were the Mavs and Connor McDavid was Doncic. But maybe it's like if Doncic was in his prime and able to string together a couple of wins and just go to another level. Like, I don't know the dynamics between the teams, but I don't know, I don't know if the hockey people slide into the DMs, comment, like, could Connor McDavid have been a little more assertive in that game 7? And the other thing I didn't know as well, too, was like substitution patterns for hockey, because it's, if I remember correctly, guys, I'm flying totally blind here, but 3 20-minute, they're not quarters. They're not, are they thirds? Periods? 3 20-minute periods? So 60 minutes of action. If you're a football player, pause. But if you're a football player, you're only going to play one side of the ball. If you're unless you're one of the 4 players that have been like the most special players ever. But you're going to get some reps, probably play half the snaps ish. If you're an NBA player, you're going to go up and down both ways, but you're going to play a max of 48 minutes. And that's only on, again, those, it would be in a game 7 situation like that, but you wouldn't be doing it every game. And you're probably going to log somewhere in the 30. So I just don't know how much Connor McDavid is expected to play in a moment like that as well, too. But also, game 7, last game of the season, like that's another thing I want to know as a new hockey. I'm not even going to say a new hockey fan, but a new hockey observer, somebody just watching on for, looking in for the first time. Really the first time, I got to say, probably the first time I've ever sat down and watched a full hockey game. I've flipped on back and forth between channels, between basketball games and stuff if it's on, but rarely I've ever sat down and watched that much hockey at one time. But is it possible for a guy to play a full game? And PK Subban was, my guess is obviously probably not, but because PK Subban was saying on First Take that he was like, giving McDavid props for playing just the entire third period itself, the entire 20 minutes. So, it's really up and down. I get it, high intensity with all the skating, but soccer as well too. And the soccer athletes, it always gets brought up when we're doing the endurance and who's in the best shape and all that. They're always going to think that they have the claim to fame. But I mean, they do have a good case because it's the biggest, surface area for any sport, I believe. I don't know if if like a swimming pool is not bigger than a soccer field. I'm not crazy. They're not swimming the length of a soccer field in fact. I'm not crazy for saying that, but it's obviously bigger than a football field. Maybe cross country marathons, things like that. But in terms of team sports anyways, is there like a team cross country? The relay people are going to get mad that I'm not calling it a team sport, but it's the biggest surface area and they're going to play 90 plus minutes. They do have a good case, but all that being said, watching one Connor McDavid game and, barely half watching and watching as a non-hockey fan as well, too. I don't think it's a hot take to say that McDavid might not quite be over Mahomes. This is the nitpicky, like, we're ranking the 1 and 2 and 3 best athletes here. But, I don't know if I feel like I need to defend the basketball and the football guys, but, you got Mahomes going back to back on the Super Bowls, 3 Super Bowls in the 5 years, 6 year span that he's been there. Just the incredible, the highlight reel electricity stuff that he's brought. I get Jokic might not necessarily bring that element the same way that Mahomes does, but I guess if you're really into basketball, like the passing and the IQs, like he really is a super entertaining player to watch. And I may not even be for just like the basketball people, like the non-basketball people, when they actually get to watch Jokic, I'm sure they have a good time, because the other thing about Jokic is he always shows up in big moments. It's impossible to stop him. So you're almost guaranteed a good Jokic performance when you turn on the TV. But that's the thing with Mahomes as well, too. And especially in a big moment. In football, it doesn't have the series. So it's not like Mahomes has ever had the bad game sixes or, something along those lines where we could have those narratives for the other athletes. But, then there is that more pressure on the NFL athletes to go game to game. You only have to win, you have to win 3 in a row. It's single elimination. So I would still probably say Mahomes is the best. And the Olympics are on the horizon as well, too. I'm going to have to get back in the Olympic brain now that, I know Usain Bolt's been out for a while. Phelps was still hanging around there a little bit. So it's like I get maybe not active like currently, but he was still winning medals at the very end as well, too. So he definitely had the case. Is Simone Biles back in the Olympics? Her name's always got to be brought up when we're talking best athletes. Maybe like a tennis guy. John Jones, if he gets healthy and gets back in the ring. So I think Mahomes, though, still has a pretty strong case for being the top dog right now. If Floyd Mayweather, see, Floyd's doing like exhibition fights, and he's not the same. And he admitted it, but that's not even disrespect to Floyd. Like, he's earned that to be at that point in his career. But if we're just talking at this given moment, Greeny, we're not trying to drop the diss track on Greeny here, but I'm just saying that it was a very strong take to be like, whoa. And maybe I don't want to be disrespectful to the hockey people, because it was a little bit of that too, where it's like, can a hockey guy be the best athlete alive? I get when Gretzky was in there. Let's double check the Wayne Gretzky tenure. This is now I feel like a bad sports fan, but again, I'm not a hockey guy. So you got to learn facts like this at some point in your life. And this is when we're going to actually learn what years Wayne Gretzky was playing hockey. So he was played from a 20-year run for our guy, Wayne Gretzky, the great one, 1978, the 1978-79 season to the 98-99 season. So, at the end, the last decade of his career there, he's going up against MJ. He's got, in the 80s, you've got Lawrence Taylor. In the NFL, Deion Sanders, Jerry Rice are all in there. The boxers as well, too, Tyson. And I don't want to start naming boxers. I know I'm going to start leaving people out. But Tyson as the big name guy, Bird and Magic would have, I guess I wouldn't have, how dominant he would have been in those early years, winning the Hart Trophy every year. I believe that's the MVP for hockey. Maybe Wayne Gretzky was the best athlete when he was currently playing. I get that maybe the MJ in the 90s there when he takes over, but in the 80s, was Wayne Gretzky the best athlete in the 80s? That's a question. Maybe we'll put that on a poll. Slide into the DMs, comment, give us let us know, because we obviously weren't there for it. So we would love to learn. But again, strong, a little strong to be like maybe the hockey guy's the best guy currently playing right now. Ohtani as well too, and I believe he's not currently pitching, so he's not like doing the two-way thing like he's been doing the past couple of years. But still, as a batter, I mean, I believe, all indications have been like he's been super incredible and been awesome at that. So, McDavid, maybe he's top three. I'd still go Jokic probably over McDavid as well too. Just big moment. Do I trust Jokic in the NBA? Again, as a non-hockey guy, more than Connor McDavid. And maybe the hockey people are gonna go, well, the team thing, it's maybe a little easier for the. I get that, watching the game as well too. You could definitely see that when the Panthers were definitely able to ramp it up there a little bit at the end. You could definitely see that as a team, they were definitely a little bit better, even to a hockey novice guy like me. But we had to ramble about hockey for a little bit because make no mistake, that's the only time we'll ever talk about it. Maybe we'll see what continues to happen in the future here as the sports, in the future sports calendar at this time of the year. But I was a little curious about why people, not like why people were talking about it, but I mean, it was the main headline story thing on First Take for a large majority of the day. It's been the big sports story, and for the reason of it being a historic Game 7 as well too. But if I wonder what is the finals would have been over by now, but like if it was Game 6 or 5 or 6 of the finals in a decent NBA, let's say a decent NBA finals versus this historic hockey game, I wonder how well it would have done. And the TV ratings for the finals, maybe the hockey game might have done pretty good. Who knows, And I know I've seen some of the stuff online saying that the streaming numbers don't account for the illegal streams, and I get that as well too. The NBA, make no mistake, the NBA fans are very good at finding the illegal streams. Maybe the best of all the sports fans. The NBA might have the highest illegal stream rate. Maybe fighting number 1, but I wouldn't be surprised if the NBA was a sneaky number 2. But anyway, shout out to Connor McDavid. No, like I said, I don't want to just be like the one time we watched him. No, he's not good. He's not legit. You're crazy for calling him the best athlete in the game. Like I'm saying, there were several moments where he got control of the puck and it was like, okay, this guy is clearly way better individually than all the guys out here. But again, unfortunately for the Edmonton Oilers fans, sorry, he didn't expect the Oilers fans didn't expect to come to the Rem and Sam pod and get reminded of their tragic loss. But shout out to the Panthers fans as well too. I think they said that's their first Stanley Cup, so that's always exciting when a team gets their first championship. Exciting for the fans, exciting for the franchise. So, Boston, definitely not the first championship, but the first one for Tatum and Brown. Wouldn't have been the first one for Dallas either, because obviously 2011. But, we've had a lot of new champions in terms of turnover, in terms of guys for the NBA anyway. So we will see if that pattern continues next year. And speaking of new guys, the information game is hard to get into in the sports world, and we like guys like Woj and Schefter. We're not necessarily trying to step on their corner as well either, too. They do a great job and breaking all the information, getting all the inside info and leaking it out to the fans, making sure we're all in the know. But if you stumble into something, you get a break. Sometimes you got to break the info. So this has been a weird draft cycle for the NBA because I feel like a lot of people have been kind of quiet a little bit. Woj as well too is I feel been a little bit quiet. And admittedly, I've not been locked on the Woj Twitter as much as possible, but just in terms of like generic, just following the generic sports blogs and stuff, I'm not seeing a lot of Woj said this about this team with this specific situation. So I don't know if there is a lot of potential chaos going on in the draft or maybe not. And that's why Woj is like, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and sit this one out. This is not interesting. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a weird little mix of both. But if, Woj is going to sit on the sideline and not break big news about this upcoming draft, which, like we said earlier, we are recording this Tuesday night. So the draft, maybe we will drop this like late tonight, but probably if you're listening to this Wednesday or whenever, the draft, first round of the NBA draft is Wednesday night. And they're splitting it up into 2 parts this year, 2 rounds, two days. So the first round will be Wednesday. The second round will be Thursday, when typically they've just been doing it all on one night. We'll see how that goes. But like we said, if the information is not going to these guys like Woj and Shams, and yeah, I've seen Gavoni leak some stuff out, some other reporters as well too. KOC is always on top of it. But I got to say, we really got to give a round of applause to IT on this one, because sometimes it feels like, we need to go back on Indeed.com and see what's up. But every now and then they come up clutch and they do something pretty incredible. And somehow IT was able to get their hands on the script for the NBA draft. I don't know how it was this. Woj didn't get this. I don't know how Shams didn't get this. I don't know how, Schefter's dabbled in the NBA world as well, too. I don't know how he wasn't able to get this. I don't know how our guys from IT were able to stumble on the script for the NBA draft. And I guess, we knew that we've always had suspicions that the lottery was rigged. And I think, seeing the way it's played out a little bit, it wouldn't be shocking at all. And, seeing this, not shocking at all to find out that the lottery is probably also rigged. But, there's been scandals with games too, refs and stuff. Has stuff been fixed? But the actual draft itself, I guess I didn't realize that there was a rigged. And I guess maybe rigged is the wrong word, because this is the script. So, maybe they just do the draft in secret and play it all out beforehand so they know what's going on. Or maybe the league as a bigger hand. I don't know. IT didn't dig up on how what necessarily the origins of the script were, but regardless, we got our hands on the script. So, I mean, there's only one thing we can do. Like we said, we're journalists here on the Rem and Sam podcast. We like to pride ourselves in our journalistic integrity. So I feel like the only proper thing to do is to read the script and let you guys know what the picks are going to be for the NBA draft. And I know that the NBA is probably not going to be a fan of this. Again, speaking of Woj, they've had to probably, secretly call Woj over the past couple of years and be like, hey, buddy, let's turn down the information game a little bit. We get, the picks before they come out, but we're trying to get people to tune into the broadcast here. So I get we're putting a lot on the line here, reading out these picks. But again, we're journalists, and our journalist integrity will always win out at the end of the day. So let's see if and we don't want to spoil it, I don't think, for ourselves either here. So let's see. It looks like all these picks are individual here. So let's pull the first one out and just go. Let's just go. Like I said, we'll just go through the picks and see what the NBA draft is going to be like tomorrow. So maybe, hey, we'll save you guys the trip. Maybe you guys can go out to dinner with your family or something, have a good night, or dinner by yourself. I don't know what your plans are going to be, but now you're going to have a free night after listening to this. But the first pick is Ace Bailey. Is this a 2025 leak in the 2024 script? What is this? I don't know. Is this some kind of mistake? Hopefully this is not like the piece of information that they like when they like plant something to see if there's a mole, and they're like, okay, if this piece of information gets out, then we know who it got back to, and we know who to we know who to look out for after that. So hopefully this is not like, okay, we sent this to the Rem and Sam pod, and if the Ace Bailey over Cooper Flag rumors start in the news cycle over the next, if those rumors start heating up, then maybe be on the look. Hopefully it's not the end of the Rem and Sam podcast, but we'll try to, let's see if we can find the right pick for this year. So Atlanta is on the board at number 1. And if you were just looking at the team and looking at the direction that they could go with this pick. So I get, at this point, it's been pretty narrowed down to 2 guys. Seems like it's going to be either Richard, the French kid. The thing is, when I was watching highlights of all these draft guys, I was definitely like listening to music and stuff while I was doing it. So I have no idea how to say any of these guys' names, but the French kid, Richer, or Donovan Clingan out of UConn. And make no mistake, the internet is split right down the middle between who these guys, or, who Atlanta is going to pick between these 2 guys. And not necessarily the internet, but it's split between the blogs, like all the, the guys that have been able to get whatever information they can. It does seem like I guess Atlanta wants Klingon, but it does also seem like everybody else wants Klingon. Like Klingon is definitely the most coveted guy, I think, of these top guys. Like most of the, like we're saying, Atlanta potentially could take him, but there's rumors that if they pass on him and say he's available at 3, that maybe like Memphis tries to trade up for him. Portland, I was reading as well, Chicago might potentially be interested. There was a bunch of other teams that are all that are all interested in Klingon as well too. So definitely the most coveted guy. But again, all of the sports books have Rasher, Zach, our boy Zachary. They all have him like as a pretty heavy favorite right now to be number 1. Like what's the proper way to say it? The most heavy favorite of the, a lot of them you can bet like the top 10 or the lottery or whatever. And he's like between him and the whoever, potentially could be at number 2 for the Wizards. He is probably the second highest, lowest. Vegas is very confident that Atlanta is going to take Rasher number 1. But again, all the information is saying that Klingon might be the favorite in that spot. And Atlanta as well too seems to be shopping Capella. I mean, that could just be for contract reasons and trying to get value for him, but they also could be freeing up that spot. Hunter as well too. Maybe they're freeing up that spot for another wing if they try to trade Hunter. But I will be curious to see who the Hawks end up deciding with between these two guys. And this is like a big domino effect as well too between these two guys at number 1, to the point where I don't honestly know if I can think of, just for me personally watching the draft, if I can think of a bigger domino effect at number 1. Because for one, I would say, just like the tiering of the draft prospects, like even if there was a debate about who would be number 1, there was still like, the mix of guys in that spot. But it was okay if he doesn't go number 1, then that guy's going to go number 2. Like Wiggins versus Jabari Parker. It's like, okay, if Wiggins doesn't go number 1, then he's going to go number 2. So he's not going to like slide necessarily. But, if our boy, the French kid, Zach, if he doesn't go number 1, I'd be curious to see where they go. And people are penciling him into San Antonio at number 4, and we'll definitely get there. But I will just be curious to see what that landing spot would be. And again, if the Hawks end up taking him, and I think the Wizards kind of already made their mind up of who they're going to take regardless of what happens here is Atlanta. So that means there's a very good chance that Klingon is available at 3. And then again, I think Houston's open for business at that point. The odds makers are saying that Houston loves Reed Shepherd, which, the blogs are also in alignment with that as well too. So, maybe that love for him is so strong they just stay there and take him. I don't know. There's just not an offer that they get that they're like, this offer is not better than Reed Shepherd and what Reed Shepherd's going to bring to the table. But I think they're very open for business at that point at number 3. And then it's just all hell breaks loose trying to trade for Klingon. And then, I get that's just one pick. So maybe the draft falls back into a little bit more normal order after that. But things do get really interesting. And I will be curious to see what Atlanta does. And it looks like with the number 1 pick, can we get the music? Bum, ba-da-bum, ba-da-bum. We're already going to get taken down for revealing the pick. So we're not going to get copyright struck for trying to poorly hum the music. But it looks like with the number 1 pick this year in the draft, there's going to be a La La Land situation where Adam Silver announces the French kid as the number 1 pick, but then has to correct himself. And it's actually going to be Donovan Klingon, number 1 for Atlanta. Unbelievable. Klingon's going to go number 1. So maybe that's trade bait for these other teams. Like we said, he's very, very coveted right now. But I think Atlanta also could use the center. And from what I was reading on the blogs, it was making a good point that regardless if they're going to trade, Murray and Trey, they're not necessarily, or Trey, maybe is the proper way to phrase that, one or the other, but they're not necessarily going to go into a rebuild because the Spurs have their pick next year. So they themselves being bad does no benefit to them. If other teams if they trade one of those guys and get picks and those other teams are bad and they get high picks from that, then that works. But that their team themselves, it really does them no good for the immediate future here to try to be bad. So Klingon is kind of a win now-ish guy as well, too, versus the French kid. One of his, nice things about it is he's like a young guy. So maybe he needs a year or two to develop, where Klingon, I think, can step in right away. And, he'll probably grow as well, too, positive, we would hope. But I think that baseline what he's going to contribute right away. And they, like we're saying, need that center. So is Donovan Klingon the piece to add to build around Jalen Johnson? It seems like that's what Atlanta is looking to. It seems like that's what they're thinking here, according to the script. But Washington at number 2. This is, we said, should we just say the French kid's name different every time, and hopefully one of them's good, and then we'll get IT to cut that one over all of the other times we tried to say it wrong. But if Atlanta doesn't take the French kid number 1, then, or sorry, what was I saying? Yeah, if Atlanta, he is the second highest, most confident guy to go according to Vegas. Sarr at number 2 is the most confident, and that's what the Wizards are doing here at number 2, according to the script. That is according to what we all think as well, so no surprise there. And I do really like Sarr. San Antonio as well, too, I think secretly like Sarr. And because Washington is such a, there's such a consensus that Washington is going to take him at number 2. If San Antonio wants him, there's still like rumblings that they're talking to Atlanta right now at number 1 to try to pop Washington and draft Sarr. But apparently San Antonio doesn't want to give up 4 and 8 to move up to number 1. That'd be a little bit too much. And they're definitely not going to give up 4 and that unprotected Atlanta pick for next year as well, too. But again, let's just say that there is a trade where Atlanta moves back. Then if Klingon's really their guy, that means they're going to be at 4. That means he's going to be available at 3, where those teams are going to be able to jump up. So maybe they do another sneaky 1 trade up with Houston and get Klingon. Or maybe they're just okay with taking the French kid at 4, because he would probably be there. Like we're saying, Sarr goes 3. And then if Klingon were not going 1, then he would be there at 3. They would do the trade, and then they would get the French kid at 4. But we've got Klingon and Sarr are the first 2 off the board. So no Klingon here for Houston. So that means there's no real trade bait for these teams like Memphis or Portland the same way that there was before. So most likely they're going to stay here and take this pick. And like we were saying earlier, Reed Shepherd is a minus odds favorite to go here, and bum. Reed Shepherd is the pick. The pick is in. Reed Shepherd to the Houston Rockets. So a perfect guy for Fred VanVleet to take under his wing in mold, and hopefully mold him into a $40 million a year plus player like Fred VanVleet somehow managed to pull off as well too with Houston, which, great job, well-deserved for Fred VanVleet. But number 4, San Antonio. Now, we had the French kid on the board. We were saying if Atlanta is here on this pick in some kind of trade back situation, then he's off the board here. Maybe it's just a lock that San Antonio takes him, get the number 1 pick, hypothetically, sliding to number 4. But I think the Castle rumors for San Antonio might be pretty strong. That might just be a overall thing, and maybe not just necessarily if the French kid is off the board, which I think is what most people are operating under the assumption of. And I think now Castle, like we were saying earlier in the draft process, has expressed his desire to be a point guard in the league. But if we just take that off the table for a second and look at it and go, okay, the Spurs are going to take a wing with this pick, now it becomes a little bit different of a conversation, because the Spurs do need a point guard. Reed Shepherd is off the board, so they can't necessarily take him here. Let's just say he is on the board. They do also have that 8th pick, and there is another guy that's really strongly connected to the Spurs at number 8, which we will get to. Looks like all of the picks are in the script, so at least we have, at least we can mention the teams here that are all picking. But I think they could afford to pass on a point guard here regardless and go with more of a wing type player. And if it's if we're thinking about Castle as a wing, the defense that he would provide is, maybe he's just straight up the best defensive, wing-ish type player. And maybe he doesn't quite guard the 4 position like you would think or you would hope a wing would when you're, thinking maybe a little bit bigger for the wing position. But I still think he's guarding, 3.5 positions anyways, both guard positions, the 3, and then he's going to, at least when he gets switched on to 4s, he's at least going to, I think, compete and make difficult for him. So maybe, does he ever get to a Drew Holiday level where you just put him on anybody? Who knows? But the defense that he provides might be a better skill than anything between him and the French kid. Now, the French kid has the shooting. Absolutely. I saw a thumbnail on YouTube. I wish I remember who the guy was that had the thumbnail, but it was the French guy and Michael Porter Jr. next to each other. And I was like, oh yeah, that comp actually kind of makes sense if he kind of had the tall off-ball shooter. Now, the Michael Porter Jr. defense, maybe you'd want a little bit more out of our boy Zach, but that type of impact anyways, when it's at its best for Porter, I think is very positive. And, like we said, contributed to a championship winning team. So I think you'd take that part of it. But that versus Castle's defense, and also just seeing Castle being part of a winning championship team in the basketball IQ to be able to buy into what is going on in there at UConn, and just the character as well too that Hurley talked about. And I, heard Hurley on an interview with Russillo. Shout out. Sam's not here to shout out Russillo, so we'll do it ourselves. But he was saying about, just the type of guy they look at a certain type of guy when they're recruiting over there at UConn. So obviously, a coach is going to say that his guys are super high character guys, but they could, I guess Hurley probably could have recruited any of the, and gone and offered any of these high end talented guys to come play at UConn. And there's a reason they went after Castle, because of that character and because of that buy-in. So I'm not saying the French kid does not have that by any means. I'm just saying that anyways, I've seen Castle have that. And I think San Antonio might like that along with the defense. So I'm sorry, Castle. Maybe you might not necessarily be the point guard. Maybe you will. We'll see what happens with number 8 at San Antonio. But I also don't know what team Castle was going to go to and be the point guard, where maybe not, maybe there's a team where he absolutely develops into a lead guard role 100%. But to just be like, hey, we're going to turn the keys of the offense over to you, I don't know if that team is necessarily looking at that right away. Chicago just brought in Giddey as well too, so they don't necessarily have an opening there on that team. But I will be curious to see which direction the Spurs go. And to be honest, I'd feel pretty good about either one, so I don't think there's a bad pick here. Oh, I don't know if this is a little bit dramatic, but the Spurs are going with Castle at the number 4 pick. So the French kid is still on the board. I think he was kind of a lock for the top 4, but all of a sudden, draft day chaos, Klingon goes 1, and now he's slid in to number 5 at Detroit. Let's see what Detroit does. Is this just a big win for Detroit where they, fall out of the top 3 back-to-back years, get number 5, and all of a sudden the guy who we thought was going number 1 is just sitting there for him? A wing? The shooting? Do they do it? No. The Pistons, according to the script, are taking our boy Matas. They're taking, this is where I continue to butcher the names. They're taking Buzelis Matas. This is great that we were able to get the script, make no mistake, but this may be a curse as well too, that I'm jinxing myself by failing this audition and failing to read all these draft names properly. But their Pistons are passing on the kid who we thought was going number 1, and they're taking Matas at number 5, which again, very, very heavily rumored right now. But I think it's there's a weird assumption where like Klingon, again, like we were saying, Klingon is kind of the favorite guy, and everybody is kind of still like doing the mocking this wing to the Hawks, and then just kind of, I think it kind of makes the rest of the draft mock drafts a little bit easier. But it looks like Detroit likes the little bit of creation that our boy Matas has, and maybe they think the defensive upside could be similar to both of those guys. I don't know, but maybe they're hoping that next to Cade and next to Ivy, they get a little secondary creation, a tertiary creation in there as well too. So Charlotte now is really in a spot where, I mean, this feels like a gift because again, the guy who we thought was going number 1 is just sitting there at number 6 for him. I feel like if this is MJ, you just got to pencil in Dalton Connect out of Tennessee. No, I don't care if it's number 6. If MJ's on the still running the team, he's like, yeah, I saw him put up 23 points a game in college. He was one of the best players in college last year, and I will take that guy. And the new regime, we will see if they do things a little bit differently here. But I know also I've seen like some Cody Williams buzz for number 6. And Matas as well, too. They said if Matas gets to number 6, there is no way. But I was also seeing his floor, again, is number 5 at Detroit. But the number 6 pick, okay, the French kid goes off the board here. Number 6 to Charlotte. Him, Brandon Miller, got a lot of potential versatility there. I think they want to bring back Bridges. LaMelo, taller potentially for a point guard, or, taller point guard as well. So what a win for Charlotte to get the French kid at number 6 in the draft. But number 7, Portland, we mentioned, was a Klingon team, and they do really want a center. Not only are they rumored for Klingon, but they're also on the trade market for potentially one of these guys, Capella, which would be like a weird win now move, but they are in the market for a big man option. So no Klingon on the board. We'll see what they do. Oh, this might be the first. Is this? I guess not the first drama because we had the guy slide. Zach Edey, number 7 in the top 10 is going to Portland, and this is, I think I've seen Edey as well too, connected to a bunch of the teams that are looking at Klingon. So I wonder how closely touted these two, not I guess two teams. Two teams I was thinking of was Memphis and Portland specifically, but I wonder how closely those kind of teams have those two guys rated. I think Atlanta pretty clearly has Klingon as an option. I don't think there's a sneaky like, hey, maybe all of a sudden we like Zach Edey. Maybe his post up moves, like the little bit more offense that he can give us. But those other teams in that second tier down, where the value cost of trying to trade up to acquire Klingon versus if you're Portland, they just go, hey, we also have 14, but we, again, really want that center, and Zach Edey's our guy, and I guess we'll just take him here at 7, and if we want a wing or some kind of guard or whatever, we'll just play the board and see what happens at the number 14 pick, which is still in the lottery. I mean, it's still a super high pick. So in this kind of draft, with, again, the weird sort of, I don't know what the prospect tiers are in this one. The board seems way more open than ever. I think Edey might be a lock for the top 10 because, like we're saying, if Portland is not able to trade up and get Klingon, I think Edey, and the script is in agreement with what kind of is the hum on the online, but I think Edey might be the pick here at number 7. And I would not be surprised as well too if they pass on Edey here, if Edey was the number 9 pick at Memphis, because that's also, like we were saying, a sneaky Klingon team who desperately, maybe even more desperately than Portland, needs a center as well too, because I think the one center they technically have on the roster is Aldama. They have Jaren Jackson as well too, but they're definitely going to need some depth at that position anyways, to say the least. So Edey in the top 10. What a rise for Zach Edey. Well-deserved National Player of the Year back-to-back years. Am I right? Definitely last year, but I can't remember if he was the year before. But dominant big man, was able to, carry his team in the tournament to an incredible run. I want to say the Final Four, but the UConn run. I think that was the national championship game, potentially, right? Because UConn just made all those games so forgettable by blowing all the teams out that I don't remember watching much of the tournament. Yeah, national final for Zach Edey. Still, 15, 25, 60% from the field against UConn and Klingon. 37 points in 10. So, yeah, well-deserved for our guy Zach Edey. Also put up 40 points in the round of 8. Let's just let's just highlight his tournament here and double check Zach Edey's March Madness tournament numbers. 64% from the field, 29 and 14 for a guy, Zach Edey. So yeah, I think in this draft, why not take a flyer on Zach Edey in the top 10? Portland locking down the center position. At number 8, we've got San Antonio. They didn't take, I guess, they took the kind of point guard with Castle, but they are also rumored to another point guard. And that point guard is, Devin Carter out of Providence, who I think is like a sneaky, really good prospect in this draft. They're taking it, if they taken him here at the number 8 pick, obviously they're giving him his due regard, but I think him and Shepherd are kind of viewed a little bit like Shepherd's like a tier above. And I think KOC was, I saw this on Twitter as well too, of a guy clipped this out and saying, of KOC saying that he has Carter and Shepherd kind of closely rated. And I would agree with that as well too. I think a lot of the things that Shepherd brings as an on ball, off ball, that dynamic is pretty similar, especially in terms of the shooting. Reed Shepherd's just pure shooting, and the shooting numbers might be a little bit higher. But I think, at some point, the shooting impacts like Carter, I think, is going to give you the efficiency that you want. And he, at the end of the day, it's like, can you be efficient? And then in big moments, can you hit the shots that you need? So, we'll see the clutchness from either of those guys. But Carter is like an incredible rebounder as well, too. And I think might even be a little bit better defender and is a little quicker. So maybe with the ball, a little bit more dynamic. I'm all in. If the Spurs are actually taking Devin Carter, like it says here in the script, then I would be a big fan. Steven Castle and Devin Carter is a big win for the Spurs. Again, if they take that French kid though, and it's our boy Zach in Carter or something like that, I wouldn't be mad about that either. But no Edey on the board for Memphis, no Klingon either. They're kind of screwed. I don't, if they're looking for a center, they might have to either trade down or potentially hit the free agency or, trade market as well to the player trade market after the draft. And we haven't had a trade yet. Maybe that's because Klingon went number 1 and those teams weren't able to move up, or maybe there's just no trades in the script. Did they do a no trades rough draft version? And then maybe the trades are the improvisation of draft night. I don't know how much of draft night is scripted and how much of draft night is improv. I guess we'll find out after watching the draft tonight. But at number 9, let's see what Memphis does here. It looks like they're going to go with, I kind of like this pick for him. They're going to go with, and this is just, again, I'm going to be a brutal butchering of this name. My apologies to this guy, but Tijdan Saloon, who is quickly like kind of rising up draft boards right now. And I'm hearing a lot of, or reading a lot of buzz about him and a lot of favorable things. And he is a very, again, highly touted wing prospect in this class. And he brings like, you want stand still, shooting off the ball, the defense, the switching versatility. He's going to bring you all that stuff. I get it. But at his size as well, too, I am curious if he is a little bit more, I don't even want to call him like a small ball 5 because, I think he's 6'10". Let me pull up the combine here and double check his height. He might be like 6'9"-ish. And I guess I don't know if he got measured at the combine. Okay, without shoes, he's 6'8" and 3/4. So just a smidge under 6'9". So he is, put him in the right shoes with like an Air Max sole, maybe not the Air Max sole for basketball, obviously, but get him shoes with nice lift, and you could definitely push him to 6'10". And you watch him play, and just the way he will set a screen and like dive to the basket and seal off a guy and fight for a rebound. It's like he does all the things that you want, like a really high energetic setter. But he, again, also is got like the shooting upside and, pretty good athlete, 6'8" in that wingish range. So I think I like his versatility here, especially without either of those center options on the board for the Grizzlies. That's a good, smart move, I think, for the Grizzlies franchise. They could go with a wing as well, too. Cody Williams I think is getting it some more buzz in this spot. If they, they could add some other shooting pieces there. I get, Laravia, Vince Williams, GG Jackson. There's some nice pieces. Vince Williams, GG Jackson, especially. But, I don't think enough where you have to start passing on guys in this class for anybody. But I do, again, the Saloon can play a couple positions there and gives you some versatility next to Jackson. I do really like that. Utah is sitting here at number 10. So I feel like with Danny Ainge, can we almost just guess it's Cody Williams, who at this point is the highest, or I guess he's not the highest high school prospect on the board. I think Ron Holland is actually the highest high school prospect. So maybe it's Ron Holland here at number 10. I don't even know if that's a reach. I think some of the NBA guys really like Ron Holland. So do they take Holland here at 10 or Dillingham as well, too? I really kind of think Dillingham might be the one here at number 10. Let's see what Danny Ainge does. Oh, classic Danny Ainge. It's Dalton Connect out of Tennessee. So Danny Ainge has to pair somebody with Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler. And do they still have Kelly Olynyk? Let's double check, because I think they can. I'm pretty sure they played all those guys as well too at the same time, because they've definitely run that lineup in the past. Okay, Kelly Olynyk is not on the. Maybe I'm tweaking. Maybe they didn't run that lineup. Maybe I ran that lineup in 2K and just am blaming it on Danny Ainge. But Micah Potter as well too. I think he definitely fills the Kelly Olynyk spot for those of you that know. But Dalton Connect at number 10 for Danny Ainge. A little surprising that he's going with the older guy here. Dalton Connect is senior. I think he'll be 24 instead of, like we're saying, Dillingham. Maybe fits a little more with that Keontae George timeline, but definitely some instant scoring for the Jazz with the addition of Dalton Connect. So next up on the board, number 11, Chicago is I would have thought maybe in the market for a guy like Dillingham before they made the Giddey trade. But, Giddey can play a couple of positions as well, too. But they've also got Kobe White. So a couple of backcourt guys. DeSumo is there. They're probably going to, DeRozan might be leaving. Zach LaVine is probably not long for the stay in Chicago at this point. And Patrick Williams as well, too, might potentially be on his way out. So we'll see who does Chicago Williams take the Patrick Williams replacement here at number 11. Oh, Chicago. This is why we can't have nice things in the NBA, because the Chicago Bulls are taking Cody Williams with the 11th pick in the draft, one pick away from him falling to the Thunder at number 12 and forcing Sam Presti into kind of an awkward situation where they could use a guy like Cody Williams. Again, a wing, shooting, all that stuff, but I don't know if they would necessarily think Cody Williams is best player available. And they're also trying to win a title next year. So it might be hard for anybody that they draft right away to, break in and play minutes for this team next year. But I do wonder if they'd want a more pro-ready guy in that 12th spot. And I wonder if Sam Presti would have to pass on Jalen Williams' brother, unfortunately. But he's not going to have to worry about it, because Chicago is going to take Cody Williams. And he will take the belt from Patrick Williams, I guess, in that spot. I would just take Ron Holland, Chicago. He's much more of a Patrick Williams type player than Cody Williams. I do like Cody Williams, though. I am a fan of his game. And am I a fan of just the idea of having Jalen Williams' brother? Does that give him a bump? Maybe a tiny little bit. But regardless, I'm a fan of bringing him in on my team if I was Chicago. Speaking of Ron Holland is going number 12 to the Thunder. A little surprising from Sam Presti. Again, it's going to be hard for anybody to break into that rotation right away from this draft class. So maybe Holland's defense is the thing. Maybe not Holland's defense as well, too. So maybe just you rely on his effort to bring up that defense with his athleticism, and maybe he's able to crack the rotation that way. The shooting maybe definitely improves, but as a stash guy, getting the former number 1 overall recruit top end high school guy, I don't think it's necessarily a bad move for the Thunder, though. It does not seem like there's going to be a trade in this script, which if the Thunder are sitting at this spot again, kind of an awkward spot for them between how do we take an impact guy versus development guy? Are we better off just trading out? Maybe it's for a player. They've got options here at number 12. So them standing pat makes me think there might not be a trade on the horizon here. Sacramento at 13 is going to take. Should we build suspense for this one? This one is a little bit of a shocker as well, too. They're going Keyshawn George out of Miami. I don't know if he's. I didn't look in to see if this guy was related to Keontae George, but 2K Georges, K and Y's in the names as well, too. Keyshawn George spells his name with a Y, but I guess they like the shooting upside of George, and I think there's a little bit of playmaking versatility in there as well too. I'm a little surprised. Are they not happy with Keegan Murray? Maybe they think these guys can play together. Is this a little long-term Harrison Barnes insurance? But with re-signing Malik Monk as well, I think maybe they're not in as desperate need for a guard, but they could use a backup ball handler as well too, and just the general third guard option for Sacramento. Would this be like a fun connect team if he was able to fall for him? I feel like he'd be able to get it and play minutes for him, but they're going to go with Keyshawn George here. I don't know, a little bit of a developmental prospect, but maybe the shooting he will be able to, again, impact right away. So the last pick in the lottery is going to the Portland Trailblazers. And, oh, nope, that's not the Blazers pick. We almost saw another pick in the future. This is the Blazers pick. Oh, okay. So this guy, a little bit of a slide. We haven't called his name yet. We mentioned him a couple times, but he has not been selected. And Portland just going to play the upside game. Rob Dillingham, number 14 for Portland. So I guess looking at the board here of the guys that have been taken and the guys that are available, a little slide for Dillingham. I don't know if I would have guessed he would have been the slide guy in this draft, but I do really like what Dillingham brings to the table, but I wonder if the teams are a little scared off by the fact that he might be an on-the-ball guy, but he isn't really an on-the-ball guy either. So I don't think you necessarily need to bring him in and be like developing him as the lead guard for a team. I think him and Reed Shepherd both showed there in Kentucky that they can be additive guys if each of the other one is sort of doing their own thing running the offense. So I would be, I think it's a good bet here for Portland to just bet on the talent. Simon, Sharp, Scoot. It's kind of a little bit of a stacked backcourt now, but maybe one of those guys is out of there in a little bit as well too. Who knows how long Simons is there for if he starts getting antsy. But I like the upside. So you get Edey at center for Portland with number 7, and then Dillingham at 14. It's a team that could definitely make a run in March Madness for the Blazers. So hopefully the Blazers fans are excited with what this script has revealed. But going outside of the lottery, Miami back on the clock, trying to run it back with another amazing pick after killing it with the Jaime Jaquez pick last year. We will see what they do. IT is saying we need to pick up the pace a little bit. So here, let's just dump out the rest of the picks for the script here. Like I said, they've got them all here in individual cards. This is incredible. We got our hands on the actual draft card. Do we have to like send these back, or are they going to make new ones? I don't know what we do with these after the fact. Do we put them up for sale on Rem and Sam Plus? Subscribe to Rem and Sam Plus to find out what we do with these draft cards that we found for the NBA draft. But we've got Miami at 15. Okay, they're taking Nikola Topic. Topic? I think it's Topic. And I don't know if this counts as a slide for Topic at 15 because there is medicals now with him as well too. For those that don't know, international point guard. I want to say maybe I don't want to say and get it wrong because maybe there's some beef if I accidentally get the wrong one. But an international guy for our guy Topic. And I would, again, without the medicals, he was earlier projected, top 10, top 5 pick. A lot of people were having him slide out to San Antonio at 4 early in the process. But I'd be curious if this slide wouldn't happen even if he didn't have those medicals, just because there's a defensive thing with him where I just am curious about what the overall upside is for that. And maybe just the overall two-way desire of where the league is going these days might cause him to, he's top 15 guy here, going 15 to Miami. But 16, Philly, they kind of need an impact guy right away. There's only, I was looking at their team on Spotrac the other day. They've only got like 4 guys under contract because Maxey, technically, he hasn't signed the extension yet. So I think it's Embiid, Paul Reed. Let me look it back up here. Let's look at who is under contract for the Philadelphia 76ers. Yeah. Embiid and Paul Reed are the only 2 guys actively under contract. They got a bunch of cap holds and restricted free agents. Maxey, like we're saying, restricted free agents. They've also got a team option on Jeff Doughton. I guess the deadline, my guess is the deadline for that's quickly approaching. Probably the same day as the Chris Paul deadline. So they're going to have to make a decision on Jeff Doughton. But, they're going to have the cap space. They're going to hunt for the 3rd star, all that. But they do need to do a good job with this pick, obviously, like all these teams do. But in terms of getting him to play right away. So I think Tristan Da Silva is going to make a lot of Sixers fans pretty happy. I like hearing that name called with the 16th pick. With the 17th pick, before I flip this card over and see who the Lakers take at 17, I need to brace myself because in my heart of hearts, the corner, the little pointy corner of your heart down, I do kind of want the Lakers to take Bronny at 17. Like if the commissioner gets up there, when we mail these cards back, if the commissioner gets up there and reads his card and it doesn't say Bronny on draft night, that doesn't guarantee that they're not going to get him and that the son dad thing is not going to not happen. They got the 55th pick. Maybe there's some kind of trade. They trade up in the 2nd round if Bronny's still available. Well, I guess we got the rest of the 1st round here to find out. Maybe if he doesn't go to the Lakers here with the next pick, but let's be honest. Like, I think I like this class maybe more than a lot. I don't know if there's a game-changing guy here either way for the Lakers. And maybe, I'm contradicting myself a little bit for things I've said in the past, where I've said this class is going to be good. There are going to be good players in this class. But, at this point in the draft, you're in the middle of the draft. So just the perception of a lot of the top players are gone. Not a lot of people are high on this class anyways. And you have a chance to do a really historic thing, and not just an historic thing of putting Bronny and LeBron together on the same team, but LeBron is going to potentially score like 24 points a game on the team with his son next year if the Lakers do this and draft Bronny. I was looking back at the Ken Griffey Jr. stuff because I wanted to see where Ken Griffey was at when Ken Griffey Jr. came into the league, and I don't think they played together right away. I think it was like maybe a trade at the end of his career, and they got to play together a little bit at the tail end there. But I mean, the trade at the tail end, it's not like, with all due respect to the great player that Ken Griffey was, he was not at the peak of his powers at the end of his career. And I'm not saying LeBron's not at the peak of his powers, obviously, but to still be at an All NBA level when your son is playing in the NBA is potentially nuts. On your team is just crazy. It's we're not going to sit here and glaze LeBron too much, but like I'm saying, in my heart of hearts, I do want to see it happen. So the most guaranteed way to see this happen is for the Lakers to just take Bronny at 17. Now, the consensus from everybody is, from a basketball standpoint and from would Bronny contribute right away standpoint, this would not be a right away contribution type of pick for the Lakers. Now, bring in Redick and doing a long-term focus, like we were saying with Sam, maybe they're more inclined to do this. But I do secretly, a percentage of me does hope that Bronny is here with this pick. So it says here, De Silva, the last pick, was the Sixers pick. And the Lakers are going to take well, it's not Bronny. So Pelinka does, I guess, the smart, well, the quote unquote, the what the basketball community will label as the smart basketball move. But to me, I think the smart basketball move is doing the historic thing and pairing them up together. In my opinion, they're going to be taking Khalil Ware out of Indiana, back to back Indiana guys for the Lakers. They took Hood Schifino last year. They're going to take the center from Indiana this year. And when they brought in Redick, there was talk about, hey, we need to bring in spacing for LeBron, and let's use LeBron, emphasize building this so we can maximize LeBron off the ball and use him in those various ways as a cutter and off the ball shooter and all those different things. But then there was like draft reports about the Lakers wanting to draft a center to play next to Davis. Now, Ware does have the potential of a 3-point shot, which is, I think, of the centers in this range, I think it's him. And is it Ives Messi? Is that how you say his first name? Yves? Ives? I don't know. It looks kind of like Burrow Ives, but Missy out of Baylor. Between those two guys, Ware has more 3-point upside. So maybe that's why the Lakers are going with that move here. But no Bronny for the Lakers at 17. No trade either so far in the script. So maybe there's no trades in this draft. Everybody in this draft is a trade team, but the Lakers, I think, are also looking to add some pieces. But at 18, the Magic, they need some shooting. They're taking Filipowski out of Duke. I kind of like this one. This is a sneaky little move for the Magic here because there are some other shooters on the board. I guess let me take a look here. I guess McCain is still available from Duke. Passing on McCain for Filipowski. I guess were they watching the tape on the wrong Duke guy? That might be a tough one. I guess Jacoby Walter, if you just want a guy that can at least take shots. Furphy as well, too, out of Kansas, if they want to try to get the Grady Dick clone. Pause. But again, I don't know if we have to pause a name, but for that one, we will. So they're going with Filipowski. I guess if we're just going to make the case for them making this pick here over McCain, it would be probably that there's just more of a path for Filipowski to play. If you think about because they took Anthony Black last year with the 6th pick as well. So if you think he's going to be more of a rotation guy next year, long term, he's in the lineup. If it's Suggs, Black, Franz, Paolo, I mean, that's 4 spots right there where if you're going to take, Furphy, shooting off your bench is not always a bad thing. Line of versatility, we get all that stuff. But McCain, maybe it's McCain. There's Paolo like a small ball 5 in that lineup, and you have McCain and Suggs and Black. Black's the 3, Franz is the 4. Filipowski might have a little bit of an easier path to play on this Magic team, so I don't mind it necessarily. It again, it depends on if Filipowski is able to learn to shoot. So maybe taking a theoretical shooter when you need spacing is not always a great move. But I like the thinking of taking a big in that spot with the lineup potentially that they have going forward. Hopefully Filipowski is the right guy to fill that role. Speaking of McCain is also next up here for the Toronto Raptors. Good pick for the Raptors. I kind of like this next to quickly. Like we're saying, McCain, he gives you the spacing. Not necessarily, I think he's in like 6'2", 6'3", so that comes, in the switchability and the versatility of today's league, that is what it is. But if you have him and Quickly and Barrett, I think those guys can play together. Does he give you a little Gary Trent Jr. insurance as well, too? Not always the worst thing in the world if you want to try to move on from whatever Gary Trent Jr.'s number is going to be. Is he a free agent this year or the next year? He will not be in a Raptors uniform too much longer, I would imagine, if he's not already out of one. So McCain is the replacement there for the Raptors. Cleveland up next is they're going with Jacoby Walter out of Baylor. Okay, I guess Jacoby Walter had to go somewhere. So they're going to pair him with Donovan Mitchell and Mobley, because I guess they're going to sign Mitchell to the extension and trade Garland and also trade Allen. So maybe they should take center insurance here, but also they want to move Mobley to center. So trading Jared Allen to do that and then drafting a center might not necessarily be the smart move. But getting I guess if they trade Garland, not necessarily the backup point guard, but him and Mitchell, is that a little redundant? Maybe you move Mitchell to point. I don't know, but they're betting on the talent. 5-star guy. I like Jacoby Walter as well too, and the Spurs also really like Jacoby Walter. There is a lot of favorable things said about him after his workout with the team. So because of that, okay, we get that he had free reign at Baylor and at high school, maybe in the league. It's, hey, obviously we're not going to be taking half of those shots. And if he's a guy that can just be like, hey, I was able to take these shots and that's what I was going to do. But if in the NBA, I kind of get my role a little bit, then I think his confidence and his potential shot making ability is a really valuable thing to the team. So him at Cleveland at 20 could potentially be a little bit of a steal there as well too. But at 21, New Orleans going to grab the other center, Missy, out of Baylor. So back-to-back Baylor guys off the board here. They get a big man to go next with Zion. They're going to, they already have the wings with Murphy and Herb Jones. They're looking to trade Brandon Ingram as well too. And maybe they need another guard, a point guard, but McCain is off the board. McCain would be an interesting guard pick in that spot to take the torch from CJ McCollum. But I guess, again, Dyson Daniels is potentially a lead guard there as well. So they get the center help next to Zion that I think they really want. Phoenix at 22, they really wanted this center, Missy, I think, out of Baylor is what I was reading. So we'll see what direction they go now that he is off the board. Oh, it looks like it's point guard. And they're going to go with Tyler Kolek, the point guard out of Marquette. I guess they're just going to go all offense for this Phoenix team. They just said, hey, that's what we've got, so we don't need to bring in a defensive guy. Let's just continue to bring in offensive pieces. Maybe that's going to be secretly the smart move. He is, a point guard, high IQ, can set people up and I think can provide some good shot making as well too. Again, the defense, it's going to be suspect, but if he's setting up Durant and Booker and making life easier for them, then maybe it's a win. Now, I don't know what this means for Beal. I mean, you're going to have to play all these guys together. This pick is going to be like one of the 7 players that you're actually going to be able to afford on your roster. So again, he's going to have to be on the court, but maybe not the best size positional switching with Kolek and Beal and Booker and Durant and Nurkic, but hopefully they're able to score 160 points a game and make it work. So we've got Milwaukee trying to add a little piece around Giannis, around Dame, trying to get back in the mix. Do they go shooting? Do they go defense? The cards say, Paycom to Diet. This is a real guy. Paycom to Diet. I kind of like this guy. I was watching some of the YouTube on this guy a little bit as well. And another international kid. Let's actually pull up the countries here that these guys are from, because we can do that. And since we can do that, we'll take the extra step and shout out. The hometown, you always got to give the hometown love. I'm sure these guys are all connected to their home countries in their hometown. So we'll go ahead and just say, for clarification, where all these guys are from. Yeah, obviously, Sar is French. Zach is French. Topic is Serbian. And I guess Matas, they have Matas listed as an international. I think he's Lithuanian, but
I don't know. I think he's also from the States as well, too. So I don't know where he technically counts. And the diet is also French as well, too. So Salam, who we mentioned earlier, going to the Grizzlies, is also French. Man, a French lineup of Zach, Sar, Salam, the diet, and Agencia, who might go in the second round. I'm just looking at a board here that's not revealing a pick later. I don't think yet. That might be a decent starting five going forward. I place a little stock in that starting five. It's definitely not a decent. It's not a good team next year, but there's a lot of upside there, a lot of youth, a lot of potential talent, a lot of shooting, a lot of versatility. So the Bucks are going to get in on it, and go with the diet at the number 23 pick. At number 24 and at 25, the Knicks have back-to-back picks here in the draft. AJ Mitchell at 24 and Jonathan Mogbo. I kind of like both these guys, both I don't want to say instant contributors, but guys that I think both can have a path to finding a way to be on the court. Mitchell, maybe a little McBride-ish, honestly, but maybe DiVincenzo can be a versatile backcourt option. Maybe play a little small ball three as well too, and then Mogbo, the center forward kid, I believe he is also out of or I was gonna say Baylor. I was thinking of green and yellow, but he's from San Francisco, also green and yellow. Jonathan Mogbo Mogbo is just a really high energy, high hustle. Gonna get all the rebounds, gonna compete on defense. So I think him in Thibodeau's system, at least he'll be able to keep up and be one of the few guys that's willing to hang in this class. So I kind of like what the Knicks are doing there, getting some contributors. At 26, Washington has a chance to add another piece around Sar and potentially grab a guard. I'm looking at my board here to see who else is left. I guess we don't need to do that. We can just read the pick. The pick is going to be, it is a guard. The guard is Carrington, Carlton Carrington out of Pittsburgh, who this might actually be the sneaky steal of the draft. I know we were saying, Jacoby Walter in terms of touted prospects is a snag for the Cavs at 20, but Carrington at 26 for the Wizards, this is kind of nice. I like his shooting. I like his playmaking, and another one and done guy who I think if it was me and I was picking between him and Walter straight up, I might lean Carrington. And let me see the other guards in the class. Dillingham. Let me go. Him and McCain is also interesting too. I think Carrington is a little bit bigger and maybe a little bit better ball handler decision. I don't know. McCain's a pretty good decision maker as well too. That's a really tough one. And I was gonna say Carrington versus Dillingham, I think is also a sneaky tough conversation. This is a good pick, a good draft for the Wizards. Shockingly, if they get Sar and Carrington, 26 and number 2, non-respectively in reverse order there, but Carrington next to Poole. Anybody next to Poole is like, maybe it's the other way around. Poole next to anybody, but Carrington and Sar as building blocks going forward. Carrington, Sar, Kispert, Advia. Maybe Poole does look good. Maybe there's a little turnaround for Poole in that lineup. Johnny Davis off the bench. Johnny Davis, 6-man. Johnny Davis resurgence. We'll keep it moving with the next pick. At 27, the Timberwolves looking to add a piece to continue the build and get one step closer to the finals. They're going to go with, I was going to say Max Christie, but it's Cam Christie, Max Christie's brother. Get a little shooting, get a little, competitive on defense. I like that. Maybe they could go with a backup point guard. Maybe this would be a Kolek team if he was there as well too. Who am I thinking of? There's another point guard kind of like Kolek. Pell Larson out of Arizona, I think could be a little Kolek-ish potentially for a team. I don't know if he'll go this high. Baylor Shireman, I guess I'm just naming white guys, white guards, white ball handlers in this draft. But maybe if if the Timberwolves want to add one to back up Mike Conley, that might not be the worst thing in the world. But they're going to go ahead and grab Christie, the shooting. And, a big day for the NBA brothers, Cody Williams and Christie, both first-round picks, both getting in. Pause. But the Nuggets, who the Timberwolves took down in the playoffs at 28. Hold on, folks. Only 2 picks left. The Nuggets, I guess 3 picks after we read that. 2 picks after we read this one. The Nuggets are taking Deron Holmes out of Dayton. All I'll say is I have my stamp of approval on this one. Maybe we'll get into Deron Holmes a little bit more after he gets drafted. But thumbs up. I love Deron Holmes. Him next to Jokic. Him next to anybody. Take Deron Holmes in the lottery. I'm all in. Love that guy. Pause. But the Jazz at 29. Of course, Danny H, Dalton connected 10, and Johnny Furphy at 29. I think the shooting is a valuable asset, but Danny Ainge is building a super team of white guys over in the Jazz. He's going to have Connect, Furphy, Markkanen, Kessler. Can he trade for Hero? I don't know who else he can bring in to make this team better. I don't even think Hawkes counts for this lineup. At 30, the last pick in the draft, we've got the Celtics taking not Chimanche, Chimanche, center prospect. And, I think obviously the Celtics are stacked. We know they're whoever they take on this team is probably not going to play right away, but they've also got Jordan Walsh just like stashed away on the bench who can't quite get minutes as well too. So I don't know if they need to go with like a wing prospect here. Maybe they could use some sort of, backup ball handler guard type thing, but Peyton Pritchard does the job as well too. I know in the finals, maybe he didn't shoot the ball. Maybe he didn't shoot the ball well from inside half court, but in the regular season, honestly, when you need him the most in the regular season, he came through and was able to provide him valuable minutes. So honestly, taking the center here, Ulrich is the first name, but NBA Academy Africa is where he's from. So I think taking that and getting some insurance with Horford and Porzingis is potentially the smart move. So once again, a round of applause to IT for getting their hands on the script for the NBA draft. I don't know if they'll be able to top this one. If they can get us a script for UFC 303 this weekend, do they have a script for that? I think if Silver in the NBA has their, greasy little fingers in the goings on of the league, then I'm pretty sure Dana White has the mob involved in the UFC somehow. But if they can get our hands on the script, maybe we'll do a short or something, which would be put up on Instagram at Rem and Sam or YouTube at Rem and Sam Podcast. If IT is able to leak the script for UFC 303, stay tuned. That's where we will throw it up. So go follow one of those pages. Follow Rem and Sam Podcast as well too on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast, because we will be back. I was going to say live during the second round, but the second round is Thursday. We will be recording Friday. So we will be back after the NBA draft to react. I don't know if we'll start doing, we'll after, I don't know how much Sam will want to talk about this draft either, because he wasn't necessarily too excited, but maybe he'll have some Cooper Flag thoughts for us on the next episode. I don't know. We'll get into it, I'm sure. But like I said, stay tuned. Thank you guys for listening. We really appreciate it, and have a good night.